Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside the Issues, sponsored and produced by the League of Women Voters Richfield. My name is Maureen Scalia and I am the moderator for this evening's TV show. Tonight I'm very happy to have with me two legislators for the State District 50, which includes most of Richfield and a chunk of Bloomington, correct?
Yes.
And on my immediate left is Senator Melissa Wiklund, and on my far left is Representative Linda Slocum. Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules, because you've got regular jobs in addition to being representatives, right? And
Well, right now I'm working full-time as a legislator. And, and so
Are you teaching still?
I retired from teaching in June.
Oh, so you're retired?
So I just retired. I'm going to do some subbing, just to...
Well, let's start with Melissa, Senator Wiklund, I should probably say. Tell us, the audience, a little bit about yourself. Who you are, where you live a little bit.
Sure,
your
yeah.
experiences.
And again, my name is Melissa Wiklund, and I was elected in 2012 to the Senate. I live in Bloomington. I grew up in East Bloomington and continue to live in East Bloomington, and graduated from Kennedy High School. I have gone on to get my degree at the University of Minnesota in electrical engineering, and that I worked in the telecommunications and data networking field. Spent about 11 years in that field, and worked as an engineer. I worked as a manager and a director, and we worked in groups that developed internet services.
Oh, okay.
And so it was a really interesting time to be working in that field, and I really enjoyed it. I took some time to be at home with my kids. I have two children, and they're 18 and 24 now. I was able to be at home with them when they were in their school years, and that was very rewarding too, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that. After some time, I was interested in school issues and decided to run for the school board, and then was elected to the school board in Bloomington and spent time doing that. So I have kind of a combination of experiences. I also have connections to Richfield. My husband has family that lives in Richfield, and we still spend a lot of time with his grandma lives on Nicollet Avenue, and she's 101 now and still lives in her own home. And
That's
so,
amazing.
yeah, it's been really, we felt really fortunate to be close by to her and be able to spend time with her in Richfield and enjoy that connection as well. So,
Good. Linda,
Yeah.
how about you?
I live in Richfield, and I've lived there for a lot of years, and I don't know how many because they all kind of mush together. I grew up in Southwest Minneapolis, graduate of Washburn High School, then went to college in Iowa, Simpson College, and then came back up here, worked for a while at St. Joe's Home for Children, Wilder Foundation in St. Paul, and a residential treatment center for kids. And the common thread here is I always worked with kids. And then I had my own children and stayed home, was fortunate enough to stay home when they were little. And when Katie, my baby, who's not a baby anymore, when she went to first grade, then I started teaching. Went back to Augsburg, got my teaching license, did some graduate work, went into teaching. And I've taught for about 25 years. Ran the numbers, decided it's very difficult to leave midway through the year, leave your students, and go to the legislature. So I decided, you know what? I went into teaching knowing I'd never be rich. The legislature certainly doesn't make you rich. It's even worse than teaching. And I thought, you know, I can do this, I think, on my teaching pension and the legislative pay. So I'm trying. We'll see how that works. I'm probably going to do some subbing. But it gives me the latitude to be able to do the legislative work when we're not in session, that I wouldn't be able to do and haven't done.
Yeah.
Case in point, last week I went out to San Jose to a wireless convention about connectivity, and anyway, I would never have gone to that. It was National Council of State Governments, wonderful convention, learned a whole lot of stuff. I had the Rail Commission the week before. October, I've traveled. The Rail Commission was in Chicago, so I would never have gone if I would have been in school, just because you can't leave the kids. So I have two daughters. They're both adults, 35 and 33. And they're both teachers. My oldest teaches in an intermediate district, Capitol View in St. Paul, level 5 behavior kids that are pretty much high school right out of jail or going back and forth. You know, they're in jail for a while, then they come back. And Caitlin just got a job in Richfield.
Oh,
She's teaching special ed behavior, middle school, and she's really struggling because it's new for her. And it's a tough group of kids. And so she's not feeling the big success that she's not queen bee yet, okay? And I said to her, just play it out, make some relationships, you'll be fine. And she will be, but she's struggling right now.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do.
Oh, it is. It
kids
is.
that have issues.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'd like to ask each of you, what motivated you to run for public office? How did you find yourself doing it? Was it people, issues? Linda, we'll start with you this time.
Well, I never really thought I would run for office. I've run campaigns. I've written the speeches. I've drilled candidates with questions. This is what you're going to get at this forum. Blah, 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 blah. Answer. What's the answer? What's the answer? You know, and help kind of educate candidates, and particularly women candidates. And then I never thought I'd run. I just never did. It never had a big draw for me. When Jane Ranum retired from the Senate, and Dan Larson decided he was going to run, he called me and he said, "Tell me you're thinking about it." And of course I told him, "I'm thinking about that Senate seat that he wanted." And he's like, no. I said, "No, Dan, I'm kidding. I've driven the district, I'm running the numbers, the voting statistics, and I'm thinking about it seriously, and I'll let you know in a day or so." And I talked to my daughters and I said, "I hope you're willing to give up your life for, campaigns." And they're used to that, so it's okay. They're fine. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to do it.
Senator Wiklund?
Well, when as I worked with different school issues in Bloomington, for both, on behalf of my own kids and on behalf of other kids, and being involved in PTAs and youth sports boards, and you feel like you are able to accomplish some things and you're able to have an impact, but there's also certain areas that you don't get to work on, and you don't have the kind of impact you do as a school board member, an elected member like that. So I guess it was kind of gradual, and it wasn't a long-term plan, but I now, thinking back, I maybe would have considered it earlier, but I was glad that I had the chance to decide to run when I did. And school board is a lot lower key race than running for the legislature, and so that was a good thing because I got to see what it was like and what you have to put in the same amount of energy, but it was a shorter campaign, and that gave me an idea when I was thinking about running for the Senate, then, what would that be like to do a much higher level campaign that required more resources, more time, and, a huge commitment. Both myself and my family, and that does require a big commitment from your family too.
Yeah, I think people don't realize until they really get into it how much time it takes, and money.
Right.
That too. Okay, so you both were elected in 2012, and so 2013 brought a new legislative session. What were your expectations, thoughts going into the legislative session? Senator Wiklund?
Sure. Well, it was certainly, I expected that it would be both a great time of learning experience for me since it was a new experience, but also I had a lot of hopes that we would be able to accomplish some positive things. It seemed like with the economy doing better and with having a coming together of a good group of people that would work together to come up with a good budget, that we would have a very interesting and productive session. I didn't have a lot of specific knowledge of what I would get to work on because we didn't, we were assigned committees towards the end of November, so I really didn't know how that would work. But I knew I was really hoping that I would get to work on some education issues and had hopes that we would have some productive impact on education.
Okay. Representative Slocum, what were your thoughts as the session was about to begin?
After the November election, I was ecstatic. Being in the minority is not particularly fun. Okay. Sometimes you can your bills will be heard, many times not, when you're not in the majority. And you really have to finesse. I mean, I did get some bills heard when we were in the minority, and some things passed, but it's very difficult. When you're in the majority, your bills all get heard, that's for certain, but and oftentimes they're included in an omnibus bill, or they go to the floor on their own. I was ecstatic because the 2 years that we were in the minority were not particularly pleasant. So it was really nice to be able to hear, get bills heard, get things done, and I think we did some pretty significant things. I feel very proud of this last session because I think we did great things for our schools in both Richfield and Bloomington, and for the cities themselves of Richfield and Bloomington.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll get into that a little more. First of all, committee assignments. If you can remember exactly what committees you were on. It's been, 4 months have gone by. Representative Slocum, changes. You were there at least 1 term, 2 terms before this last one?
Yep, this was my 3rd term. This is my, I think, 3rd term, yeah. And time flies when you're having fun. I'm vice chair of K-12 Ed Finance. So that's about half the state budget, almost half the state budget. That's a significant committee. And I work very well with the chair, Paul Markwart, Representative Markwart. He's from the central western Minnesota. So you've got an urban educator, and he's a rural educator. And so we're both teachers. Oh. So it's a nice mix. It's very good balance. And I'm on Commerce, the Commerce Committee. So, in fact, I have a meeting tomorrow on, I think it's about licensing or something, interior decorators or something like that, because I'm getting all these emails, and I haven't really even studied the agenda because the meeting's not until Wednesday, so I have a couple days to study the agenda. But I'm getting all these emails from people from all over about don't license us, la 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 la. Okay, give me some reasons, But I'm also on crime and public safety, which I have really enjoyed because we thoroughly vetted the gun issue this last session.
I'll ask about that in a bit.
And I'm on one more. What is it? Commerce, public safety. I don't know. Some other one. There's another one I'm on. What am I on? I don't know. I'll remember it. Yeah. It'll come.
Okay.
Oh,
it did come.
It did come. The big one, taxes.
Oh, yeah.
See, I'm trying to forget taxes. That's why.
I would say that's probably really big.
Filled your life.
Very controversial.
Well, and Paul Thiessen called me, the speaker called me at 10 o'clock at night, and I'm in bed reading, and he goes, would you serve on taxes? And I said, Paul, education, public safety, these are, taxes? You really want me to go on taxes? And he goes, yeah, I need you to go on taxes. I said, I'm on taxes. So that's how I got on taxes.
Okay. Senator Wiklund?
Yeah, we were asked to fill out kind of a survey of what our interests were, and then there was a committee that was formed after the election that went through a process to decide who would be placed on which committee. And so I had asked to be on the education committees. There's a policy committee and then a K-12 finance committee. And very fortunately for me, I was placed on both of those, and so that was really interesting because then you are able to hear the bills as they are have to do with a policy concern and get a thorough discussion. And then in the finance committee, you hear them again, but you're talking about them from a financial impact standpoint, and you really get to know them well. So I was really glad that I got to be on both of those. I was also on the Health and Human Services and Housing Policy Committee, and I'm vice chair in that committee with Senator Kathy Sharon as the chair of that committee. That committee is really fascinating as well because you're hearing all of the bills that have to do with human services policy decisions, programs, and there's a great deal to learn in that area too, and that was really interesting to be a part of that committee. And then after the session began, they asked if I would be on the State and Local Government Committee, which is it's an interesting committee. It has to do with a lot of different areas that are collected and go through that committee that either have to do with a particular state concern, state memorials, different state articles like that, or local positions where the state has to make a statutory change to affect a local position. So that was very interesting as well.
Would it be fair to say that legislators spend a good chunk of their time in committee hearings and committee deliberations?
Yeah, I'd say
definitely.
So. Yeah.
50% more?
Well, I thought it was interesting for me. I mean, at the beginning, you spend a large amount of your time, probably more than half the time, I felt like, in committee hearings. But then as you move through the session, then you're changing after the committee deadlines, which were this year in March, you're kind of changing to more sessions that are on the floor. So then, some of the committees, like the policy committee, they kind of went away, and those bills, everything that was going to be heard was heard, and so we didn't meet.
Quite as often.
So, yeah.
And when you're running bills, you can be in a committee and another committee is hearing your bill.
Oh.
So you have to leave that committee and go to that committee and present your bill. And you have a number of bills to present. So it gets a little crazy during that period of time. And then, as Melissa said, we go to more floor sessions once deadlines have been completed. And then the bills are run on the floor. And then you feel like you live on the floor. You don't have a home. You have a little chair and your little table and your little stuff and your computer and your neighbors.
And that's where
you live. And for the last few days, now not the Senate so much. The Senate, you are way more dignified. Way more dignified. The House will go forever. We usually have 2-3 all-nighters where we're there till 4 or 5 in the morning, arguing something, making some point.
Yeah, we had several where we were very late and went pretty long, but we only I should say, it was quite a significant. We had one that was all night, and that was very long. Yes, it's hard to work all through the night.
All day and all night.
All day and all night. Yes,
and that's we're not yet spring chickens.
Right.
We need our sleep.
That's right.
Okay, first I'm going to ask you about bills that you presented and how they did, and then we'll talk about the more general issues on the whole legislature. I think it's your turn to go first. Representative Slocum, what bills did you present, introduce? How did they do?
My favorite bill, you want my favorite bill, came from Richfield.
Yes.
And I had heard some about it because Mindy Greiling was the education finance chair, and she and I were pretty close friends, and so we had talked a little bit about this because this was one of her bills, to do the organized hauling.
Okay, well, we should, for benefit of our audience, we're talking about organized garbage hauling.
Garbage hauling.
Where a city can choose to go with either a consortium of companies or a single company.
Yeah, and very, very simply, the bill made it fair for a city, the local, any city in the state, so it's not just Richfield, but any city in the state can notify their haulers, their garbage haulers, that they want to organize. And then the haulers have 6 months to get their act together and divide up the market share. So no hauler is left out. Big, small, MAPA, grand, gigundo, BFI kind of hauler or a MONPA hauler, everybody has their market share. If they can't come to some agreement, then the council does it and divides up the area, and the city council. And then you would have one garbage hauler going down your street every week, which would have probably the garbage truck, the recycling, the yard waste, the composting if you have compost hauling. Although I think that goes in the yard waste with the yard waste.
Yes.
I know in our city. But and what it does is it takes, actually it ended up being the environmental bill of the year, because it takes the big trucks are not rumbling over the streets, and you can have like 25, 27 trucks every week going over the infrastructure in a city, which damages the roads. They also, now some of the garbage trucks are going to natural gas as the fuel that they use, but many are still using the fossil fuels and are burning, polluting the air with that. And you've got all these trucks going up and down the streets. And I have to tell you, the bill was dead, completely dead. It had missed deadlines. And that was because of my knee. I had some problems with that. And so I took the bill from DOA, dead, and I ran it through committees. I sweet-talked my way through, ran it through the floor, got it signed by the governor, and then got an award from League of Cities. Because they said anybody who can, and I had from one of my committee chairs, he was kind of playing both sides. And so I had a heck of it. I backed him up in his office and I said, listen, I'm coming with this bill. It will be heard. If I have to bring it up in committee myself, I'll grab that gavel from you and watch me do it. And he goes, I know you will, Slocum. And yeah, because, no, you're not going to play this with, we're on the same team here. Come on. And so it got heard, signed. So I got an award from the League of Cities for Legislator of Distinction, because and the note said, if any legislator that can take a bill that's dead after deadlines and run it through the whole process, you got it going on. So I'm like, yes, yay. But that was my best bill. I did an estate sale bill, which was a commerce-based bill. I had a constituent from Bloomington call. And then I did some investigation. She had an estate sale for one of her relatives who had died. And yeah, and she got ripped off, and I checked with the Attorney General's office, and there were other complaints, and so I thought there needed to be some kind of recourse for people. So I crafted a bill that just said that the estate sales people would have to post a bond, so that if they rip people off, which apparently a few of them do, most are very good and very upright and do the right thing, but there are some unscrupulous ones, and if they rip someone off, then the people have some recourse. So it was pretty simple, pretty good government commerce kind of thing. So those are my two faves.
Okay. Yeah. Senator Wiklund, how did
Well,
things go for you?
I thought they went well. I had several bills or several opportunities to take on bills that were the new people. They often come to them with bills that maybe administrative departments need passed, and they aren't glamorous, and they're not real flashy, but they do have there is a need to be filled for a department or an agency, and I did take on several of those, and they were very interesting. I got to learn about more about Department of Health, more about the Board of Medical Practice, the Department of Human Services, things like changing some archaic language that was still in various statutes from language that was used maybe 40 years ago and it was okay and people were supportive of it, and now we have better terminology. We have more better terms for areas around disabilities, and and it's good to update the language. And so some of them were things like that. Some were kind of interesting areas that maybe I didn't know that much about, so I had to work with a staff person from the department and learn about the area enough to be able to talk about it, because once you take on a bill and you are going to carry it, then you're presenting it in a hearing, and you need to be able to talk about it. And then once they pass through a hearing, then you need to be able to talk about it by yourself on the floor. I also took on a couple bills for different types of service, well, I'd say associations, like ambulance, emergency medical technicians. They needed some language changed in a statute. Optometrists, it had to do with some of their scope of practice. And so some of those you get to know some of the issues that come up with bills like that. In terms of things that I was particularly interested in, I had an education and early care bill that did pass one of the committees, but then it didn't move forward. And so I had the experience of being able to take something successfully through one committee, but then didn't get a hearing to go forward from there. All in all, I thought that the bills that I was able to take through the committees and take to the floor, I was successful, and I got quite a bit of practice with the floor sessions, and that's interesting challenge, because you don't know when somebody might decide that they would like to amend your bill, and interesting amendments that might come up. One bill that was particularly interesting for me had to do with the Metropolitan Council. They have districts, and those districts need to be decided by population, just as legislative districts do. And so after a census, they have to go through a redistricting process. And so I carried the bill that had to do with defining what the new districts and what the new map look like. And that was interesting because I worked with the Metropolitan Council, with the legislative department that creates maps, and learned about that reapportionment process, and then the political side of it in terms of what people might think about their district if it changes, and people are kind of possessive about that, and they want things to maybe not change, or maybe they'd like it to change in a different way, and so
compromise.
Right. So it was coming up with a map that was a compromise and the best effort, and then taking that forward in the floor, and that was a more controversial bill, but it did pass, so that was interesting.
Okay, now I'll ask you, overall, what do you feel were the major successes or things that you were glad got done last session? You want to go first?
Sure. I think for me, I think the biggest area of success would be education, and as Linda mentioned, it really was satisfying to come out with not only new funding for our schools. Richfield and Bloomington both will see per pupil increases this year and the next year. Also the all-day kindergarten, to fully fund that. District like Richfield, where they made a commitment to all-day kindergarten some years ago and have been providing it as an optional, for all students without a charge. Now, coming next year, they'll be able to use money from the state to really fund that, and use the money that they've been taking from somewhere else, to.
And there was also some payback, the money
shift
that the state had borrowed from the school districts. Some, not all of it, but some got back.
It's
Yes,
gotten
almost
close.
all of it's back
Right.
now. There's very little still out. And we designated that any, how do you label it, the money, any extra money that came into the state that wasn't already budgeted for, surplus, kind of surplus money, would go to pay back the schools right away. That's the first priority. And we made that number one, and we have almost paid them all back. They're almost at 90-10, which is standard. Every year we pay them 90%, and then in the fall pay them the 10% additional. So we pay them the 100%, but it's divided 90-10, and we're almost at that 90-10 right now, payback with things paid back. That was not our finest moment to borrow from the schools. It really shortchanged them. Many of them had to go out and borrow money to operating funds. It hurt charter schools in particular because they don't have tax backing, so their borrowing is more difficult. They don't have taxing capacity, I guess I should say, so their borrowing is difficult. Traditional districts suffered with the two. It was just a very last-ditch kind of stopgap, didn't please me at all kind of thing. Sometimes you plug your nose and you got to do what you got to do. That's one of them. But I'm really pleased that we're almost paid back.
Okay, so another bill, Representative Slocum.
She covered the good stuff.
Sorry.
I loved raising the per pupil allotment. That was very significant. The all-day K for every kid in Minnesota, every little kid, is wonderful. The early childhood, ultimately we need to do more there, but I was pleased with our first steps because for every $1 that you spend in early childhood, you get a $16 return on the investment. Yes. So if we invest the money in the early childhood, we're making later down the road, that child is not going to require the services, not going to require, although I have read some things too, where by third grade, things kind of flatten out. And, you know, that makes some sense, I guess. So I think we have to be very careful I do believe in early childhood education, don't get me wrong, and I believe we need to invest in that. But I also think we need to keep the data watch the data very closely and make sure we're getting the bang for the buck there. Because I think, particularly for kids from poverty, you do get the bang for the buck. But for middle class kids, you get less bang for the buck. And I think we also need to look at, these kids are starting out and they're starting out ahead of the game, and this is great. But when they get to high school, what are we going to do with them? And we have a dropout rate that's not very cool, pretty devastating. And we have some skill gaps, and we have an achievement gap that's scary. And I don't see us doing a great deal to change that. And I would like to see us work on that end of it also, so that, that kids can graduate from high school with some kind of marketable skill.
Yeah, that's key.
Go through an internship program, get certified to do something, and if they're headed for college, fine, do the college prep, do the college in the schools. We've got tons of programs for that. But I'd like to see more internships and more on the high school end also, as opposed to just the early childhood. And that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Okay, some bills were very controversial. Stadium bill. What happened to the gun bill? Now, can I ask? I know that's a huge issue with the League of Women Voters. So I guess I can ask that question. Which of you want to go first?
Well, I would just have a fairly short answer to that. I mean, I would have, I was hoping that we would be able to support some gun legislation, but it didn't move from a committee to the full Senate. We didn't have any of the bills come to the full Senate, so we didn't have a chance to act on that, and so I don't have.
And a lot of that was mostly just really tightening up background checks.
Right. That was the Senate, the bill that would have come forward, but it didn't. So, and Linda, you probably have more personal experience.
I was on the committee. I was there for the hearings. People were stuffed in the committee room People were lined up all around the committee room. There were, armed cops at the doors, and you knew there was a lot of metal in the room. I sat through the hearings. I did leave a hearing and got all kinds of flack for it too, by the way. Left a hearing when this guy brought down his semi-automatic weapons, about 3 of them, and laid them on the hearing table. I thought, you know what? I've had enough here. I have had enough. I'm done. I'm out of here. And I walked out, and then I got some emails saying, what's the matter with you? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know what? No, I don't need it. I know what a semi-automatic weapon looks like. The hearings were contentious. They were argumentative. They were mean-spirited. People were rude. There was intimidation, bullying. It was all kinds of bad. And nothing came from it, and there were no minds that were changed. It was about background checks only. To go any further wouldn't have happened, and I am sorry to say that. I fully and completely support background checks. Do I think that's going to take crime off the street? No. But I think it does clean up some of the loose ends that are hanging out there. I think to address gun violence, we're going to have to address mental health issues, and we're going to have to come straight forward with mental health issues. Because what we've seen with the gun violence of late, it comes from the mental health side. Gets exacerbated and goes on and on and on, builds and builds. The person gets a gun, they go shoot something up, or someone up. A number of years ago, I taught on the near north side of Minneapolis, and my student that I won't because now I'm retired, but I would never, after this kid, I vowed never to let a kid get this close to me. He lived off of Broadway in Penn, and in just unbelievable, no food in the refrigerator. I mean, just this abject life. And he was a gangbanger, and I brought him to my house when things would get hot there, and he could stay a few days and till things cooled down out there. And the teachers I taught said, "Oh, how can you like him? There was something about him." I said, "I don't know. I just do. We got a thing, and I just anything I can do to help him, save him, keep him from harm, I'm going to do." And I did, I think, gave him a few extra years. He did take 4 bullets to the head at age 20. But it didn't happen when he was 14 or 15. So, and again, he was gang, and he wasn't going to not be gang. That wasn't going to happen. He was too deeply involved. But guns, and when I was teaching at Franklin, I could have laid my hands on a handgun, within probably 10 minutes time in the school building.
That easy.
Oh, yeah. First locker that I checked, we had to pat down lockers, and we were looking for library books. Oh, yeah. First locker I checked, and I had never touched a gun before in my life. And this kid had a handgun. He's a 6th grader, had a handgun in his pocket. So I'm, Birch, the principal, come over. And, it shook me up, because you don't think of little kids having access like that. But they do. They do. And it isn't just North Minneapolis. It's our schools, too. There are weapons there every single day that you don't know about. And maybe that's okay that we don't know about them in some sense. But you get a kid who is having problems with depression. You get a kid who's bipolar. And we're not real good at diagnosing kids. And we need to get way better. And we need to confront those issues and deal with them before the kids go out and hurt others, or the adults who are mentally ill go out and hurt others. I'm sorry, I kind of got on a soapbox. You know what? If somebody wants to hunt, go hunt. I would never do it. I'm a carnivore. I do eat meat, but I like it wrapped in plastic. But I've had some wonderful deer meat, and I'm not going to take somebody's hunting guns. I don't want them. But I have a problem with handguns. I do, because they're so mobile. I have assault rifles. I have no time for, none. And that's why I left when he came and laid these out. And it was meant to intimidate. It did. It intimidated me to a degree. I was offended. I guess intimidated is the wrong word. Offended that he felt he needed to do this. And so I walked. I said, I've heard enough now. I'm out of here.
Yeah, and I don't know, do you think a gun bill will come up again next legislature?
I don't think with the people in the legislature right now, what the speaker has said, because I talked to him, I'm very close to Paul, because we were in the same district and we've worked together for years. Anyway, he and I had talked, and I said, you know, we've got this controversial marriage bill, and we got people, they're going to vote for this. It's going to really hurt them for re-election. It's really going to hurt them, and you know. And I said, why don't, let's have a floor discussion about the gun bill. Because then, you know, they can be for the Second Amendment, and, you know, but at least it's out there. It's being talked about on the floor, not just in our committee. And he said, if I don't have the votes, I'm not going to run it. So he didn't have the votes, didn't get run.
Okay.
And I don't see that until, unless we get more pro registration and background checks, I don't see that happening.
Senate, pretty much a done deal?
Yeah, I don't foresee, or I haven't heard anything that would say that we would be acting on it next session or in the next year. I don't know what will happen after that, but I'm not aware of all of the things that that committee would be working on. So,
okay, what does the budget look like? I mean, are we going to have enough, or are we going to be in the red? What is the projection at this point that you face in terms of funding the government?
well, I think that right now we're thinking that there will be adequate funding. The budget will be adequate to cover, and that there will be maybe some slight surplus that would still first go to pay back the school shift. I think that next year, if there isn't a deficit, then we probably won't deal with budget issues. I haven't heard that we're projecting any great surpluses of money, so then we would work more on bonding issues.
So this year is primarily, this session is more of a bonding issues? Not so much budget. The budget is set kind of in place already?
Well, the budget is balanced. So we produced a balanced budget, which we haven't seen for a while. And there will be, we've had good economic, we're on a slow recovery. Our economy is, it's not dazzling, but it ain't bad. And we've had some excesses, some surplus, and that's gone to the schools. The government shutdown affected really negatively some states, but Minnesota doesn't get a whole lot of Fed money, so it didn't hurt us as much as it hurt other states. So it's kind of a ripple, not a tidal wave kind of thing. So I think we're going to see a surplus again in November. I think we'll see a surplus again, smaller in November because of the shutdown, but it'll be there, and hopefully that'll take care of the school bill. And then we can go on, because there are some tax bills that were added onto the tax bill. Thank you, Senate. It was the Senate that piled those on at the very end of session, but I voted for it too, you know. So, but you know, I think we have to look at the business-to-business taxes and look at, well, what Dayton has said is he'd like this next session to be an unsession, to undo some of the things that maybe need more thought or were unintended consequences, those kinds of things. And, you know, I'm not sure exactly what he means. I want to know more, because I don't want to undo a lot of good stuff either. But there are things, you know, we talked earlier about school boards being able to renew a levy. An existing levy without having to go to the voters, which is expensive and time-consuming and everything else. If voters have already okayed it once, go ahead and renew, like every city does, like every county does, like governments do, and we elect our school board. If we don't like what they do, send them packing. So, you know, things like that. I can see us undoing some unfunded educational mandates, the business-to-business taxes, the warehousing tax we've heard so much about. But again, if we're going to undo a tax that's going to unbalance things, that has to come from somewhere. Do we cut, or do we have enough surplus to cover it? So, you know, when the other side of the aisle, and I respect them and work with them closely on every bill I've run. I work with the Republicans too, but you know, they can shoot and throw rocks and do all this stuff. You know, we got to repeal this, repeal that. Where's the money coming from? Show me the money, because otherwise we're out of balance, and that doesn't work.
Yeah,
So,
we've been
you know,
through
yeah.
So what are you planning to do? Sponsor next session then? We'll start with the Senate.
Sure. Well, I'm looking forward to working on educational policy discussions. We're going to start meeting again in November and December and talk about, you know, what are some areas that we might still need to work on in the next session. You know, are there things that are, as Linda mentioned, that it make more efficient or work better for the schools? Have we set up policies that are maybe more challenging for schools than they need to be? So, you know, that would be an area of interest for me to work on. I hope to champion if there are bonding requests from Richfield or Bloomington, you know, to be supporting those as they go through the process. I know that Richfield has one already that they would like to see move forward. Bloomington, well,
77th Street
Oh,
underpass.
the
Underpass.
tunnel, yes.
So
Okay.
that one for sure. Obviously, if there are people in the community who see a need, an infrastructure need in their community in Bloomington or in Richfield, you know, hopefully they're talking to their council members about those areas so that they can kind of rise up and get forwarded to us so that we know, you know, what the communities want us to support in terms of bonding measures. So look forward to working on that as well.
Well, we've had Richfield sponsored we had the chair of the bonding committee, Alice Hausman, and the chair of the transportation committee, Frank Hornstein. We had them out, and we took them on a little bus tour, 77th Street, and showed them the sand pile where you turn in and there's the big sand pile, and said, this is what we want to do. Look at the businesses here. This would be an economic engine. It would be tremendous. We need to do this. And as we left, I said to our dear Mayor, Debbie Gotel, I said, guess what? They're talking. Because they were getting in the car talking. So I'm hoping that goes. We'll work very hard on that together to get that through both bodies and get it bonded. And this is the year. I swear to you, this is the year. I feel it in my bones.
Well, for people that don't know, I mean, way back to, I'm blanking. Who was our long-time 5th District congressional
Martin
person?
Sable?
Yeah, Marty.
Sable.
Yeah.
Martin Sable really believed that should be passed, to have that tunnel. And, you know, I was on the crosstown this weekend when, you know, 494 was closed. It was awful.
It's a mess.
It was absolutely awful. I mean, just for safety, I thought to myself, if an ambulance tried to get through, they couldn't. There would be no way. So I think, you know, that's a good one for you guys to be working on.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, one of the other areas that I'm going to work on is alternative education. It's kind of near and dear to my heart, okay? I've always worked
define
with
alternative education.
recovery schools for kids that are chemically dependent. Alternative, you're not fitting in with the regular high school. Richfield has an alternative program, an ALC, Alternative Learning Environment, or ALC, whatever. Anyway, it's for kids that, it's kind of the kids that don't succeed in the traditional. And they go at things in a little different way. And what we did this year, which I kind of didn't like too much, is we put the ALC funding, it used to be a separate column, and we've got tons of columns for education, but it used to be a separate column. Now we put it in under the auspices of superintendents. Now, some superintendents get it and realize the need for an alternative program, and some superintendents don't. And so it's going to be very spotty, and the investment will be spotty, and I'd like to make that more uniform. I think it's a mistake that needs to be corrected, so I'm going to work on that too. Yeah, and I'm always interested in, I think we will see some domestic violence legislation.
Yeah,
Prevention
we've had some real tragedies.
We've
this
had some
past
major
year.
tragedies, and I'll probably be a part of that too.
Anything else for you?
No, I hope that I could possibly work on more early childhood, or if we can set up any additional policies around early childhood and child care funding to try and direct more of our state money that goes to child care. We can direct it to high quality child care, you know, if there's some work we can do around that. I think having kids in high quality daycare is a really important thing.
I was amazed. They were talking, it was just some studies that came out talking at the difference in income level versus the number of words an 18-month-old has heard.
Yeah.
That it really correlates incredibly with income level. And children of poverty just have a very weak exposure to words versus those of better income. And that to me is something that it's very difficult to make up as the child grows up.
Right. Being ready for kindergarten there's such a range of experiences that children have, and if they can all come to kindergarten with, you know, a pretty good range of hearing words, if they can have different opportunities to see and experience different things, they'll be much better off as they go through school. I think that, you know, combining maybe some visits to parents' homes and helping them with, here's some things that you can be doing in your home for your children, and some training like that, combining that with training care providers so that they have knowledge of how to best set up their daycares. I think that really can make a difference.
Yeah.
And both Richfield and Bloomington do have, they do with their early childhood, they do parenting classes alongside. So the kids are doing some with just the kids and a teacher, and the parents are in another room learning English and learning parenting, some parenting tips and skills, and they have a checkout library, check out some books to bring home and read to the kids. And both Richfield and Bloomington do that and do a nice job of it, which I think is great. And actually in Bloomington, and I don't know if we're doing that in Richfield, but I know they do the dental and the medical clinic in the school for the kids, little kids too. So I think that's a very positive kind of wraparound services, and I think that can help address some of the lack of language.
Yeah.
Isn't that heartbreaking? When I read that, I'm just like, oh.
Yes, it's something that I think we really need to think about. Very quickly, we haven't touched natural resources, climate control. I know the Star Tribune did that article on the boreal forest. Any thoughts of the legislature looking at any of those issues, or not really anything they can do about it?
I have a cabin up in Lutsen and that I dearly love that I didn't get to go to all summer, but that's a whole another story. But I belong to the Arrowhead Electrical Co-op, and they offered a tour of the Coal Creek coal burning plant in North Dakota. And so I went, and I didn't go as Madam Legislator. I went as Linda Slocum, member of the Arrowhead Electric Co-op. They had no idea. It was great. And so I went and I toured the coal burning plant. And the guy said, "Okay, we dig up the coal, and here you're down in the strip mine basically, and they're digging up the vein of coal, and I have 2 chunks of coal." He goes, "This lignite, you know, this is lignite. It's great stuff." And yeah, great, okay. And he goes, "We take it and we burn some of it, and we burn off the moisture, and that takes care of 40% of the mercury." So I said, "So what you're telling me then is 60% is going up that stack over there?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "That's unacceptable." And we have in Minnesota a moratorium on coal burning plants. We will not build more, and we don't purchase. So, yeah, more coal from coal burning plants. North Dakota's suing us because they think our next gen energy laws from '09 are too stringent, and they're not stringent enough. But then XL, it was, I think XL, said that they are going to more wind power, and that they're going to have by 2025, which is when they're supposed to have 25% of their energy from alternative sources, renewable sources, that they were going to have like 30 to 35%. So, you know, that 25% I think seems kind of low given what we've got going on with climate change. But it was very interesting, and I think you'll see some additional legislation.
Any thoughts?
Well, I think we'll see maybe some legislation around that area. I think that the mining issues in Minnesota, I think, will be definitely discussed. Definitely hoping to hear from people how, you know, our constituents, how do they feel about, you know, the balance between our needs and economic needs and jobs, and also environmental needs, how to protect the areas, you know, and what's the best compromise for that. So I think that will be an area that will come up. Probably the sand mining in southern Minnesota. Some areas were resolved or acted on, but then some were kind of didn't make it all the way through, and so I think there'll be more discussion about that. How do we best regulate and monitor what happens with the sand mining?
Well, we have reached the end of our hour, and we have to close the show. So I want to thank you both so very much for being here. Hopefully it's been informative to your constituents.
Yes.
And the voters know a little bit more about you and about the legislative process and some of the bills that you plan to work on and have worked on in the past.
Yeah.
Thank you to the League for having us.
Well, it's always good to have you. And to my audience, so we have just finished a discussion on legislative issues. My guests were Senator Melissa Wiklund from District 50. It keeps changing every 10 years.
That's
I'm
right.
old now to have gone through a number of changes. And Representative Linda Slocum, who has one half of the district, 60B, I believe, right?
50,
50B.
50A,
Right.
50A. I'm the A side. I'm
Oh,
the
you're the A side.
Now, yeah.
Okay. So again, appreciate your time with me.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, good night.